Hi there, I'm Laci. My family once gave away my bedroom without telling me, said it was the right thing to do. But that was just the start. They erased my name, my memories, and eventually tried to erase me. Ever been treated like a guest in a house you helped pay for? Or watched your silence get used as proof you were okay with everything? Before we dive in, I'd love to know, have you ever been excluded by people who claimed they loved you? What time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I really want to know. The front steps creaked beneath my boots, brittle from the snow that hadn't melted in days. Denver was gripped by a cold spell, but the chill that slid under my coat wasn't from the wind. It was the way silence waited behind that door, heavy, watching. I held a store-bought apple pie like a peace offering. They always said I never brought anything to the table. This time I brought sugar and cinnamon in a tin tray. My mother's car was in the driveway. Jody's too. Of course it was. The door opened before I knocked. My dad smiled as if the last Thanksgiving hadn't ended with me walking out, coatless, into the night. "Hey, kiddo," he said, like we were fine. Like nothing ever happened. "Merry Christmas." I nodded, stepping inside. The warmth of the house didn't reach my skin. I didn't plan to stay long. Just drop the pie, wish them well, leave. That was the agreement I made with myself on the drive over. "I'll set this in the kitchen," I said, ignoring the tension coiled in my stomach. "Jody's upstairs, setting up," Mom called from the dining room, her voice sugary. "You remember where your room is, right?" I paused mid-step. My room. I walked toward it on instinct. The doorknob was cool against my fingers. I turned it slowly. Inside, everything was different. Gone were the posters, the books, the crooked picture frame I never hung straight. In their place, pastel rugs, essential oils, a yoga mat unrolled near the window. A ring light stood in the corner beside a whiteboard labeled "Mindful Coaching with Jody." My breath hitched. The closet door was open, filled with her branded sweatshirts and merch. "She uses it for her sessions now," my mom said behind me, startling me. It just made sense, sweetie. You don't even live here anymore. The way she said it, so casually, like I'd been evicted from my own memories. "You didn't think I'd want to know before you cleared it out?" I asked, my voice flat even. "Well, we didn't think you'd mind," she replied, stepping past me like the conversation was over. "You're doing so well in the city. Jody just started her family. She needs the space." Just like that, I was reduced to doing fine. No child, no need, no presence. My hands curled into fists, hidden by my coat sleeves. 16 years ago, I'd come home from school with perfect attendance, a B+ in math. My mom hadn't looked up from folding towels when I told her. But when Jody made the volleyball team, she got dinner out. I remembered Christmas that year. Jody unwrapped a brand new iPod. I got socks, 3 pairs, still bound in plastic. "It's what she needed," Mom had said. "You already have music on your phone." Even back then, the scales were never level. I swallowed the lump in my throat, turned from the door. "I left a pie," I said, brushing past her. "Merry Christmas." I didn't wait for a response. The cold outside stung less than what waited inside. I walked back to the car, wind cutting into my cheeks, the pie dish still warm in their kitchen. That night, I opened my laptop, not for shopping, but for something permanent. The morning light slid weakly through the frosted windows as I wandered through the house I no longer recognized. My boots barely made a sound on the hardwood floor, the silence pressing down like an extra layer of snow. I didn't know why I stayed the night. I hadn't meant to. Maybe I'd needed one more look before I cut the cord for good. I moved like a guest, touching nothing, brushing past old photos now replaced with framed affirmations like, "Be your highest self," and "Healing is a journey." I paused outside what used to be my room. Now, it bore a small plaque, "Jody's Studio." My hand trembled slightly as I pushed the door open. It smelled like lavender and incense. The air was too still. The closet caught my eye. The same closet I once cried into, shoved notes inside, stacked medals on the top shelf like trophies of belonging. I crossed the room, Pulled it open. Empty. Not just cleared, scrubbed clean, like I'd never existed. Panic coiled in my throat. I marched downstairs, past the blinking tree lights and the untouched pie on the counter. "Where are my things?" I asked, sharp but controlled. My mother glanced up from her tablet. "What things?" "My photos, letters, my medal from the state finals, my journals." "Oh," she said too casually. "We threw them out. Jody needed the storage. You moved on, didn't you?" I stood frozen. "You just got rid of them?" "It's not like you told us to keep them, Laci. We assumed they weren't important anymore." That assumption gutted me more than the act. 16 years ago. I was 17, crying in that closet after my college application was rejected. I'd written a page in my journal. Maybe I'm not good enough. Jody had read it out loud during dinner. Everyone laughed. I never told them, but that closet became my retreat, my silence, my safety. Now it was a yoga prop shelf. "Laci?" Jody's voice floated down from the stairs. "Is something wrong?" She walked into view, leggings perfectly smooth, hair tied back, a soft smile that felt sharpened at the edges. "I needed the space. You haven't lived here in years," she said. "And your life just fills up every room, doesn't it?" Mom stepped in, defensive. "There's no need to get upset. You never said any of it mattered." I could have screamed. Instead, I let silence speak for me. I picked up my coat, zipped it slowly, walked outside before the tears could find their way down. In the car, I opened my phone, flipped through years of digital memories, photos of birthday parties, school dances, prom night. They didn't feel like mine anymore, except one. Me and Max, our old terrier, noses touching in the backyard under a blanket fort. I saved it. Deleted the rest. I didn't cry. If the past couldn't fit in the closet, it didn't belong in their future, but it still belonged to me. The envelope was cream-colored with a soft shimmer, tucked between electric bills and coupons in my mailbox. It was thick, deliberate, formal. My fingers hesitated before pulling it out, heart catching on the edges of my name. It wasn't printed, it was written, in blue ink. My name, scribbled in small, cautious letters that didn't match the embossed names of the bride and groom on the outer card. They'd printed the invites weeks ago. I wasn't supposed to be invited. I stared at the handwriting. Jody's. I'd know it anywhere. Sharp, elegant, detached. Inside, the card read, "Jody Lane and Harper Winters request the honor of your presence." Except under guest name, it said, "Nicholas Hart +1. A last-minute adjustment had added Laci in the margin, a sharp slant as if trying to squeeze me into a space that wasn't meant for me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I hadn't spoken to Nick in months, maybe more. He was a friend of a friend from high school, not someone I imagined sharing a wedding table with. But somehow, to them, he was the main character in this social equation, and I was his accessory. I texted him. His response came fast. "Yeah, weird, right?" They said I could bring someone, so I didn't argue. Didn't know it would be you. It wasn't mean. It was honest. And somehow, that honesty sank deeper than any insult. We met for coffee the next day, in a small cafe where the steam curled around us like question marks. "Do they even know who you are anymore?" he asked, after we both sat in silence too long. His words stung because they didn't come from a place of cruelty, but clarity. I remembered Jody leaning too close to him once at a graduation party, brushing his shoulder with hers, laughing a little too loud. Nick had looked uncomfortable. I'd brushed it off, but now, I wasn't sure it had ever been about me. "I think," I said, forcing a small smile, "they know exactly who I am. They just prefer to forget." He sipped his drink, his expression unreadable. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, actually, better than I've been in a while." That night, back in my apartment, I held the invitation again. The handwriting glared at me like an afterthought on parchment. I slipped it back into the envelope, folded the flap, and placed it in the drawer with expired warranties and takeout menus. No RSVP, no fight. Instead, I opened my journal. The same one I'd carried through college, through grief, through all the lonely Thanksgivings. I wrote one sentence, bold and sharp. If I'm always an afterthought, I'll be my own headline. This wasn't about showing up to their wedding. It was about no longer showing up small. I arrived late on purpose. The restaurant pulsed with soft jazz and polished silverware, but nothing about the air felt warm. Just cold smiles and the kind of laughter that never quite reached the eyes. A celebration dinner, they called it, for Jody, for the wedding, for family. Place cards lined the long white table like declarations of belonging. Mine, unlike the others, wasn't printed. It was written in black ink, a different pen, slightly slanted, like it had been added last minute. Again. I recognized the pattern. I sat at the far end. The waiter appeared, elegant and discreet. He placed a folded slip of paper in front of me. My bill. My own. Everyone else's plates were being cleared, wine refilled, glasses clinked in congratulation. No one reached for their wallet. Mom and Dad took care of everyone's, Jody said without looking up from her phone. They figured you'd want to handle your own. You've always been the independent one, right? The words landed soft but cut deep. I didn't realize independence meant isolation, I murmured. Don't be dramatic, she smiled. You should have used that promo code I sent last week. I think it still works. I blinked at her. A discount code. For my sister's engagement dinner. My stomach tightened, not from hunger. I looked at the bill, $62.50 before tip. I could afford it. That wasn't the point. It was the casual cruelty. It reminded me of one winter break in college. We'd gone out to dinner, just the four of us. I was struggling to juggle classes and a part-time job. When the check came, my parents paid for Jody's meal without hesitation. Mine? They slid it toward me. You're working now, they'd said, as if that explained everything. Some patterns don't fade. They just grow bolder. I excused myself quietly and headed to the restroom, not because I needed it, but because I needed a moment. To breathe, to steady the quiver in my hands. In the mirror, I didn't recognize my reflection, but I did recognize the girl inside, the one who always smiled through the snubs, who accepted crumbs and called them enough. I walked back to the table, slipped my card into the leather folio, and added a generous tip. Not out of grace, but dignity. Jody didn't glance up. Neither did my mother. Before dessert was served, I stood. I've got an early meeting tomorrow, I said. That's a lie, Jody said lightly. Then it fits the mood, I replied. I grabbed my coat. The waiter nodded politely as I passed. Outside, the night was sharp with wind. I didn't mind. It cleared something in me. They didn't see it, but I wasn't at that table anymore, at least not as the same girl who walked in. Brunch for one had become a quiet ritual. My favorite corner table, the same pale eggs Benedict, and a lukewarm latte I never finished. That morning, the sun filtered through the cafe window like it was trying too hard. I scrolled mindlessly through my phone, just trying to pass the silence. A notification blinked on screen. A friend had tagged me in a photo album, Jody and Brad. The journey begins. I tapped it open. Smiling faces, champagne flutes, Jody in white lace, hair caught in golden hour light. Every cousin, every friend. Shot after shot. But not one included me, not one. I scrolled slower, waiting to spot myself in the background, maybe laughing or holding a drink. But there was only absence, mine. A hollow cracked open behind my ribs. Comments bloomed under the photos. The cousin chat is losing it over that last pic. OMG, the flower bar idea from the group was genius. Cousin chat? I hadn't seen a single message. No invitation, no ping. I texted Alina, my youngest cousin, the one who still sent me TikToks of huskies and matcha tutorials. Was I ever added to the group? The dots bubbled, then paused. Oh, I thought you opted out. Jody said you weren't into all this stuff. Right. They decided for me again. 16 years ago, I was 14 and standing on the edge of the Johnson family barbecue photo. Uncle Brent had lifted his camera and said, "Let's get one with just the immediate family." I'd stepped back automatically, even though Jody yanked me into the frame a minute later. I was always the removable piece. Now it was digital, easier to crop, less explanation required. I texted my mom. "Why wasn't I in the engagement photos or the group chat?" She replied minutes later. "They thought it might make you uncomfortable. You've seemed distant, sweetie. No one wanted to upset you. They, them, everyone but me." It was a familiar flavor of dismissal, sugared with concern, as if exclusion were a gift. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then placed the phone face down. Back home, I opened my laptop. Not for work, not for journaling, for something precise. I began outlining a legal draft. Quiet, intentional, protective. My breath was steady. If they insisted on cutting me out of the frame, fine, but I would start drawing my own. A few files were created, some names were written, none deleted, just noted. I paused, reached for a sticky note, wrote 7 words. If they keep cropping me out, I'll draw the frame myself. Then I taped it above my desk. I'd never been asked to be part of the story, but I was done waiting to be written in. The lights on the tree blinked like they knew they were lying. Tinsel draped over every shelf, stockings lined the mantel. One for each family member, even one for the dog, but not one for me. I brought a single gift bag with neutral wrapping paper, small, weightless, not even tied with a ribbon. They were already laughing when I stepped in, all sugar high from eggnog and inflated tradition. My mother beamed as she handed Jody a sleek, silver-wrapped box. "It's the latest. Tracks sleep and stress," she said. Jody squealed, "Perfect for my followers." Everyone laughed. I was handed a hand cream set, lavender-scented, from a discount store. I smiled. "Thank you, really." No one noticed my tone was flatter than the wrapping. Dessert was being prepped when I reached into my purse and handed my mother the envelope. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. She blinked. My father paused mid-laugh. Jody's spoon clinked against her wine glass. My mom opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside, folded precisely, was a legal document. My father unfolded it. His mouth stayed closed, but his eyes narrowed. "This is the house deed," I finished for him. Jody blinked. "Wait, what?" My mother's voice cracked through the silence. "It was supposed to include all of us." "It did," I said. "You made other choices." The silence was no longer festive. It was surgical. 16 years ago, I'd added them to the deed. "So you'll never be alone," Mom had said then. It was after Dad's health scare, and they convinced me joint ownership meant safety, trust. Later, Jody pitched an idea to sell the house. "It's just sitting there, Laci. I could turn it into a retreat space. You'd get exposure." That's when the shift began. Quietly, legally, irrevocably. No one spoke now. My mother's hands trembled slightly, but she said nothing. Jody looked down like her fork had betrayed her. I stood, calm, steady. No hard feelings, just clarity. I walked to the door, coat already over my arm. No one followed, no one called after me. Outside, the cold bit through my sleeves, but I didn't flinch. They thought the paper was a gift. It was a declaration. I rehearsed in front of the mirror until my jaw stopped trembling. The folder sat on the coffee table, thick with receipts, printouts, and timelines. I pressed record on my phone, just in case, and whispered, "This time, I won't cry." Their front door hadn't changed, but something in me had. I stepped inside with the kind of quiet that announces it won't stay long. My mom was dusting glass figurines. Dad glanced up from the game. Jody wasn't there. "I just wanted to update you both," I said, setting the folder down. They looked confused, like I'd interrupted a script. I didn't wait. "Over the last 10 years, I've sent more than $42,000 your way. Mortgage catch-ups, tuition cosigns, last-minute emergencies." Dad raised his hands. "We didn't ask. You didn't say no. My mom crossed her arms. It was family. So was I said. But somehow I became the donor with no plaque. I flipped open the folder. Neat rows of bank transfers, email printouts. I pulled one page out slowly, let it breathe in their silence. Jody's email to my mom. If we say she offered, she can't claim a thing. Silence. Then stillness. A different kind of cold settled over the room. My father blinked. My mother's fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. No one denied it. No one reached for the paper. 16 years ago, I'd wired $5,000 for a roof repair after a hailstorm. Dad had hugged me. You saved us, he'd said. But the roof never changed. And later, I overheard Jody thanking them for helping with her down payment. I connected it years too late. Now their silence wasn't confusion. It was calculation. I closed the folder, left it on the table. I don't need an apology, I said. Just space. I turned, hand steady on the doorknob. You don't mean that, Mom said weakly. I looked back once. I stopped meaning a lot of things for you a long time ago. I walked out without my coat. The wind hit me like a rite of passage, but I kept going. I'd carried them far enough. It was time they learned to walk without stealing my shoes. The email came in as dusk fell outside my apartment, the sky a dull lavender, the city below dimming into stillness. I thought it might be a coupon or one of those useless promotional things. Instead, it was forwarded from my mother. A message from Jody's wedding planner, stiff, sugary, sanitized. To preserve the harmony of the day, Laci is asked to support from afar. I didn't blink, didn't move. The air in the room thickened like it had a body, one that leaned hard into my chest. I read it again. It wasn't a disinvitation, it was a sterilization. Hours later, Jody followed up with a text. You know how your presence shifts the mood. It's not personal. I remembered a birthday dinner years ago when she'd said I was too intense after I asked our uncle not to joke about my career. You always make things uncomfortable, she'd smirked. Now here we were again, me, the inconvenience, me, the unwelcome truth. 16 years ago, I hadn't been invited to her graduation dinner with friends. Mom said it was girls only, even though I was already in college and one of her friends brought a boyfriend. I'd cried into my pillow that night, telling myself it didn't matter. It always did. This time I didn't cry. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and clicked record. I looked straight into the lens, didn't flinch. I spoke about what I gave, what I lost, what I watched them take. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The words sharpened themselves. I uploaded the video to a private link and sent it to my mother with one sentence. This is my RSVP. Then I deleted the wedding from my calendar, wiped it clean like expired milk. I booked a solo retreat cabin in Estes Park. Fireplace, snow, no signal. Just me. That night, I stood by the window, watching the lights flicker in the building across the street. Someone's TV flashed pink and green. Laughter floated up. It wasn't mine. I whispered aloud, You don't need to be seen by them to be real. They'd cut me from the ceremony, but I wasn't cutting myself from my own life. They feared I'd ruin the vibe. They had no idea the storm I already survived. I woke to a glow on my laptop screen, notifications buzzing like flies. I hadn't checked Instagram all weekend. It was Sunday morning, the kind of quiet that makes every sound too loud. I clicked the first headline. Denver bride's viral winter wedding a modern fairy tale. Jody's face smiled back at me in satin and snow, Brad's arm perfectly wrapped around her waist. I scrolled. Dozens of photos, rose petals, twinkle lights, choreographed laughter. Every face familiar. Every face but mine. Not even a candid, a background blur. Nothing. I didn't exist at her wedding. Not even an accident. On impulse, I typed a message to her. I saw the post. Congrats. Send. Seconds later, the screen shifted. This user is no longer available. Blocked. A text buzzed in from my mother. Please don't stir things up. She's married now. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was scar tissue. hardened, silenced, almost admirable in its neatness. Then came the email. From a rep, someone from Jody's brand team, polished, distant. They respectfully asked if I could remove my name from an old blog post I wrote years ago, one where I talked about growing up feeling invisible in my own house. Apparently, it was confusing her followers and undermining her brand values. No apology, no recognition. Just, please untag yourself from your truth. I didn't reply. I pinned the post instead, with a quote from my journal. Sometimes the clearest reflection is in the mirror they try to fog. 16 years ago, my father had taken me to lunch and pleaded, "You two are sisters. You only get one." I'd smiled, the way people do when something cracks but doesn't shatter. She's not the one I lost. You were. I didn't need another scene. No revenge. Just silence, finally mine. That evening, I recorded a new voicemail. "Hi, this is Laci. If this is family, please leave your name before your message." I submitted a photo series to a local gallery. Old family trip pictures, beach days, birthdays, faded Christmases. The exhibit was called "The Ones Who Left Without Saying Goodbye." It sold out opening weekend. And when I lay in bed that night, breathing in the stillness I earned, I realized I wasn't aching anymore. They feared I'd ruin the vibe. They had no idea the storm I already survived. I didn't disappear from their story. I rewrote mine so well they couldn't recognize it. If there's one thing this story has taught me, it's that silence isn't always peace, and walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes, choosing yourself means standing in the storm with no umbrella, letting the rain soak every inch until you realize you didn't drown. You rebuilt. We don't get to choose the family we're born into, but we do choose how much space we let them take in our lives. And if that space starts costing your sanity, your worth, your voice, maybe it's time to redefine what family means. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away just to find yourself again? Was there a moment you realized you weren't the problem? You were just no longer willing to be small? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, or type 1 if this story touched you in any way. If you didn't vibe with it, tell me why. I'd love to hear your perspective, no judgment here. And hey, if this story made you feel something real, don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories ahead, and one of them might just be yours.